After 4 years of waiting, Diablo Immortal has finally released. I've been covering this game since the beginning, and it is interesting to see how the gamer community has changed their opinion of this game in the last 4 years. The first video I did on this game was my first viral video ever. I released it just a few weeks after they made the announcement, and the video exploded, but mostly because it was kind of controversial. Most of the gaming community back then wanted to rail on Diablo Immortal. They wanted to rail on Blizzard for how horrible they were for making it a mobile game, how horrible mobile games were back then. And I used this video to try to explain both sides, and people hated it. To this day, it is the most hated video I have ever had, with only a 60% like ratio, but it also exploded, so I wasn't complaining. Now 4 years later, the video is so fascinating to watch, so I'm gonna play the whole video for you guys. You are gonna be blown away by some of the predictions I made and how they ended up lining up, how the community back then that hated this video, you're gonna watch this video and you're like, why did people hate it? The gaming community has changed their opinion on mobile games, so this video 4 years ago was way before its time. If you've already seen the video or you just don't want to watch an old video, then you will notice that this video has timestamps, so you can just skip to the next part of the video. Last month, Blizzard announced that they will be releasing the new Diablo as a mobile-only game, which created a huge uproar. Now, most people realize that it's their game and they can do what they want, but what really confused people was Blizzard's reaction to people being upset about it. Blizzard was legitimately caught off guard when they were booed on stage. So Blizzard and the gaming community are obviously on different pages, and I think I know what happened. Blizzard is a big company with a lot of resources, and even though I have no doubt that their game developers play a lot of games, they are going to have a different mindset about games than the rest of the world, because games are their job. And one of the things that they are all going to be keenly aware of that we are not necessarily aware of is that the gaming industry is experiencing one of the biggest shifts in the history of gaming. Gaming is rapidly moving to the mobile phone. So much so that if you look at the data, a lot of experts would argue that within only 5 years, 80 to 90% of gaming will be on the mobile phone. Now, before you rage quit this video, let me show you the data that they're talking about so that you can decide for yourself whether or not you agree with them. Now, one of the things that you need to keep in mind as we look at the data is that in the area of technology, convenience almost always beats quality eventually. Over 70% of you are watching this video on your cell phone, even though the resolution on your computer or TV is much better. The biggest argument against mobile gaming is that a mobile phone will never be able to have the quality that is offered by a computer or console. I have argued this exact point myself, but in the last 6 years, money made from computer games has only increased by 27%, from $26 to $33 billion annually, and money made from console games has only increased by 9%. Meanwhile, money made from mobile games has increased by 453%, from $13 to $70 billion, making it to where as of this year, 2018, which is just now finishing up, mobile games just surpassed computer and console games combined, totaling at 51% of the entire gaming industry. So this is really recent, but what gets more interesting is what the experts say will happen now that it has crossed that 50% mark. The most conservative experts say that it will just continue to trend the way that it has been trending, which is still a lot of growth for mobile games. But there are other experts that believe that now that it is becoming the norm, now that it's hit 51%, the growth is going to increase exponentially. Okay, so that's the first video I did on Diablo Immortal 4 years ago, and it was quite a bit ahead of its time. People hated that video because it was telling them that mobile gaming was going to take over. Now that mobile gaming has taken over quite a bit, but PC gamers and console gamers realize, oh, we all have a place. Just because mobile gaming has kind of hit the top doesn't mean that there's not going to be PC gaming and all of that stuff. People are calming down a little bit, and the video gets a lot more likes now than it did back then. But back then, it was incredibly hated, so I did a follow-up video addressing the three main arguments from the, hundreds and hundreds of hate comments that people made. I kind of addressed the three main issues that they had. I'm not going to show you guys that whole video, but here's a few highlights from that video to give you kind of an idea of what that video is like. After reading your feedback, I would categorize your opposition to mobile gaming into three main main arguments. The first category of pushbacks was questioning whether or not gaming is actually shifting, or if rather PC and console gaming are completely separate from the new growth of mobile gaming. Some of you argue that the growth of mobile gaming was due to the differences between Western and Eastern cultures. Others of you argue that the boom of mobile gaming was due to the increased mobile access in less affluent countries. And then some of you argue that the growth was because there are now, quote, more moms and dumb people playing games. So with the exception of that last argument, I would say that all of you are onto something. The differences between the Western and Eastern worlds is a factor in mobile game growth, and access to mobile phones is growing in less affluent countries, which would naturally bolster these numbers. But in addition to these, there also seems to be a shift of people that were hardcore PC gamers who now consider themselves primarily mobile gamers. In fact, in the discussion from that previous video, I read dozens of comments of people making confessions of how the busyness of their life is turning them to mobile gaming. Many of them are reluctant and even apologetic, but they are still making the shift. The second category of pushbacks was related to the professionalism of gaming. Many of you were keen to point out that even in the photography industry, professionals don't use their phones to take pictures, and that DSLR sales have increased. This is a great pushback. I don't think that PC gaming will ever disappear, nor did I argue that in my last video. Some people think that console gaming might become a novelty one day, but no one thinks that computer gaming will disappear. In a similar vein, others of you pointed to the utility of a keyboard and how the response of a button will always give a keyboard and mouse an advantage over a phone, and that this will keep professional gamers on the PC. This is also a great pushback, but I do not think that all professional gamers will stay on the PC. Sports are not formed based on maximum performance. Running did not cease to become a sport when racing cars became one, nor did racing cars stop the formation of racing four-wheelers. If mobile gaming is able to present new challenges and new competitions, then new sports will form. Also, professional gaming is ultimately paid for by viewership, and viewership is sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes influenced by relatability. So if more people move to mobile gaming, it is likely that professional gaming will eventually reflect that percentage. The third category of pushbacks was that all mobile gaming is full of microtransactions and that Blizzard is just making a money grab. This is by far the most common pushback I got, and I have the same fear. I agree that most mobile games are money grabs, and I'm afraid that even Blizzard will stoop to that level. But I don't think that it's safe to assume this yet, and many of the rumors regarding this topic have almost no evidence to support them. Okay, so those two videos were kind of right together right when it came out, and it was controversial at the time. You will also notice in that video that I respond to some of the positive comments. Turns out there were a ton of gamers back then that did switch over to the mobile game, but were ashamed to come out with it. And when I posted that video, that original video, a ton of those gamers started confessing that they had actually switched to mobile gaming. So I used some of those comments to show that the shift had already been happening. But then a year and a half goes by and I don't cover the game at all, and no one hears anything about the game. It's like Blizzard went completely silent. Even though NetEase says that it was already ready to be released, Blizzard says nothing about it. It's just absolute silence. So then in 2020, I do my first top 10 video. It didn't do well. It's nothing like the success that I'm seeing nowadays in my top 10 videos, but that's partially because it wasn't a top 10 video for everyone. It's more like a, hey subscribers, what do you want me to play? And I put it at the bottom of the list, the bottom of the top 10, but it still was there and I didn't mention a whole lot about it. But even back then, it's interesting that when I mention it like, oh my gosh, they announced this so long ago. Of course it's gonna come out this year.
And then the last game on the list is Blizzard's Diablo Immortal. Those of you who have been following my channel know that Blizzard announced Diablo Immortal a long time ago, and it was a huge outrage, and they basically got booed off the stage, and I covered that on my channel. If you guys have not seen my playlist on the future of the gaming industry, which is centered around the Diablo Immortal fiasco, then you've got to go see it. It is still, to this day, my favorite playlist I've ever made. But Diablo Immortal is a hack and slash MMORPG, and basically based on the looks of it, it is going to be really good for the mobile phone.
So I thought I was going to be covering that game in 2020, and that definitely didn't happen. Then in 2021, I did my first real top 10 game list for the year, and it exploded. It's got almost 1 million views. People like my style of doing research, and I put Diablo Immortal as number 3 on that list. I thought surely after another year of waiting, this would be the year that it came out, and it didn't. The third game is Diablo Immortal. Like Wild Rift, this is another long-awaited game from a big game company. I'm not going to show you any more of that video because it's kind of generic. There wasn't really any more information. We just thought surely, each year we thought surely this year is coming. So it's in the top 3 of that year, and then of course it doesn't end up coming. So by the time this year came around and I ended up doing this top 10 video, which got even more views, I was wary of putting Diablo Immortal on there. I was like, is this game ever really going to come out? But I'm glad I did because it is coming out this year, and I put it as number 4 in the list. I thought about even making it lower, mainly just because I didn't know if it was going to come out this year. I'm still glad I put Apex at the top, but honestly, if I knew for sure it was going to come out this year, I might have put it even higher in that list, because Diablo is just a classic title and action RPGs do really well on the phone. So I'm glad I put it on this list. The game has finally come out. I'm glad you guys got to see it. If you guys have not seen this video, I know most of you probably have because, you know, it's getting a lot of views. But if you haven't seen it, you should check it out. My predictions for this year are going pretty well. Obviously, Frostborn didn't work out, but other than that, I'm curious to see how my predictions end up playing out by the end of the year. Okay, so that's it. I actually mentioned Diablo Immortal in several of my other videos, but nothing too substantial in which I needed to put it. The main thing is that you can see the transition of the gaming community over the last 4 years, how it was such a thing that they opposed to now it is mostly what is left is just excitement. I'm really curious to know whether or not Blizzard knew that might happen, and so that's why they were chill and didn't talk about it and didn't release it, even though NetEase confirmed 4 years ago that it was already ready for release. So I'm really curious whether or not them waiting was a good idea because it got rid of all the bad publicity and now what is left is just people excited about the game, or if now that it's released, people are going to be like, oh, this game would have been amazing 4 years ago, but now meh. If you've already been playing the game and have an opinion, please put in the comments. I'm really curious of your opinion. Was it a good idea that Blizzard waited 4 years, or do you think they should have released it 4 years ago? All right, guys, I'll see you next time.